Josh, it's just so freaking obvious that he doesn't live in Alabama. And I think one key indicator of that is he could have put all of this to rest a long time ago if he had just released the kinds of documents and data that demonstrate unequivocally, undeniably, that he has been based here in Alabama, as you said, in that three bedroom, one bath house in Auburn. The fact that he has not done that, to me,
Peters called it student housing.
That is a real strong indicator already that he's lying about this.
Alrighty, welcome in. It's your favorite political podcast. It's Alabama Politics This Week with Josh Moon and
David Person.
How are you, David?
I'm all right, man. It's another beautiful day here in North Alabama. How about you?
It is. We're in that weird time of year though, where it's warm, really, really warm one day, and I'm really happy. And then the next day, I can't say that it's bitterly cold, but it's colder than I want it to be. I mean, it's getting down into the 70s. I don't like it to be that cold. I don't like it to be that cold.
That makes me laugh to hear you say that the 70s are cold. That's funny.
I told somebody. I told somebody the other day. I said, "Let me tell you what one of the worst things about winter is. The worst thing about winter is how it changes your perspective on what's warm and what's cold. And like you go outside, you're like, ooh, it's 70 degrees. It's so warm out today. No, it's not. No, it's not. It's not. It's not warm. Not warm, okay?
Oh my!
So
goodness.
We got to get ourselves up into the 90s. We need. I tell you, what's really bothering me is the lack of humidity out here. That is really, really bothering me a lot. We need to get that humidity cranked up to near 100 as well.
Oh my goodness! Man.
Yes, it's coming, man. I see it right around the corner. These days of jackets and hoodies. Let me tell you the other bad thing about winter. This is the thing I hate the most. The multiple loads of laundry over these big ass clothes you got to wash all the time, man. That's the worst thing. In summertime, man, I can get everything done for the week in one load. That's
okay. I hadn't thought about that. You may have a point there, but I'm just trying to picture you in 40-degree weather wearing a parka. I guess that's what you do, huh? You wear a parka when it's in
40?
the 50s and 40s.
Well, I don't go out. I can tell you that. That's I ain't doing nothing, man. I got the heater blowing in the gym in the garage, and I ain't doing nothing, man. You ain't getting me out in 40. Yeah, you die out there like that. That ain't happening. No, come on. Hey, before we get into everything, let me tell you about our friends at Wind Creek Entertainment. They make this thing go. We really appreciate them. Had a couple of lovely conversations with some of their folks over the last few days, and man, they are really, really good people. I mean, seriously, I don't, there's sometimes you have, folks that you do advertising with, and they're fine, they're good, whatever. But having talked to the leadership folks, Stephanie Bryan, Arthur Mothershed, just so many people around there that I've gotten to know over the course of the last several years. They're genuinely good people. That doesn't matter about, the business side of things, I guess, but it matters to me in that, I know what they're doing. I know what they're trying to do. I know how they operate. I know how they think. And it's nice to be partnered up with folks like that. And also you'll hear us talk about the SPLC later, because we're having a couple of attorneys on from the SPLC to talk about some things that are happening in the news right now. And those kind of groups and those people who help others when they don't have to. To. I mean, the SPLC, of course, that's their entire mission, is to help the impoverished. And that has been really the goal of the leadership of the Porch Creeks as well, is to help the folks on their reservation and to build that out. And then they've branched out from that and started helping needy folks all around their area. In Atmore, and what they do for the young kids around there, the operating the boys and girls clubs and things in the summer programs for kids to come to. It just, I mean, I would say it's like $50 for the whole summer, for them to come. It's nothing, it's just insane. And they bring kids in from like 6 counties around to participate in these programs. I mean, what somebody who has done that, who has tried to find childcare in the summer months. Do you have any idea what a blessing that would be to send them to some place that, my Lord have mercy. But we're talking about the Wind Creek Entertainment portion. Those are the folks that sponsor us, and they operate 3 fantastic resorts in this state, and Atmore, Wetumpka, and Montgomery. We've stayed at them. We love them.
I've been to both of them.
Great
They're
stays.
great.
Yeah. Yeah, they really are. They're the finest, and that you can have. We would encourage you to go. We're into holiday travel time now with the summer months coming up. Spring break is happening all around. We're just coming off spring break ourselves. If you're headed down to the beach, break up that stay with Wetumpka, Atmore. You will not regret it. Look them up online at Wind Creek Entertainment. Go and stay. Have yourself a good time at the restaurants and at playing the games, at the spa, at the resort-style pools at both places. Look up the events that are coming through there. They're going to have great acts around. I'm telling you, you will not regret it. Won't regret it. Look them up online, Wind Creek Entertainment. All right. Let's get to, I guess, really with the legislature being out this week, our biggest news has been the filing of a lawsuit. I guess this is going to be the first one. It's the first filing of a lawsuit against Tommy Tuberville, and also against the Alabama Republican Party for allowing Tommy Tuberville to be on the ballot and not hearing a full challenge of his residency. And it was filed by Republican challenger Ken McFeeters on Tuesday. And that lawsuit, which was, oh, my Lord, which was one of the weirder lawsuits I've ever read. I mean, just to be honest with you. And it was filed by God's Law Team.
That was strange. I don't really get that part. That was kind of weird to me.
I don't either, and I don't really know who's on God's Law Team. Just to be honest with you, either. It's I assume Mark or Luke are on there. I don't know. I mean,
that's just weird. Let's just go on and just say that was pretty weird. That was weird.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's the whole thing down through there was weird in terms of filings of lawsuits. Okay, now look, it's it'll get in, it's going to be filed, and so it's a legitimate lawsuit, but it's just the whole structure of it was a little odd. Okay, or a lot odd. But listen, he, the one thing that McFeeters says that you cannot get past is this: we all know that there is no way in this world that Tommy Tuberville and his wife, a sitting U.S. senator, a multimillionaire former college football coach, is living in a 3-bedroom, 1-bath house in Auburn.
Yeah.
When there is a $6 million beach house in his name sitting where he's traveling to, and his travel records continuously show that he's traveling back and forth to this beach house.
Yeah.
It's not happening. And we know that it's not happening. Okay.
That's common sense. Yeah.
Of course it is. Of course it is. And I just, look, is he going to be governor? Man, I hate to say probably. I mean, let's be honest. But when you say that probably, what does everybody follow that with? Because we all know they're not going to do that. We all know that the judges are not going to follow the laws. We all know that they're not going to step in and do anything. And that's true, right? That we're going to ignore the law. That's what everybody says. Don't you think that's true?
Well, okay. So, in terms of whether or not he's likely to be elected, the probability is much higher that he is than that he isn't. I think I can agree with that. What the judges will do, I'm not as certain that I can say definitively that I have a definitive feeling about what the judges are going to do with this or not, because I think the problem is it's just so, as you said earlier, Josh, it's just so freaking obvious that he doesn't live in Alabama. And I think one key indicator of that is he could have put all of this to rest a long time ago if he had just released the kinds of documents and data that demonstrate unequivocally, undeniably, that he has been based here in Alabama, as you said, in that three bedroom, one bath house in Auburn. The fact that he has not done that, to me,
McFeeters called it student housing.
That is a real strong indicator already that he's lying about this. And then, to go further with the fact that all the reporting you've done, all the reporting that others have done, clearly points to the fact that there's no way anybody with any modicum of common sense can believe that he's telling the truth when he says that, he leaves Washington and goes back to Auburn. There's nothing that has shown that to be true. And the information that could have shown it, he hasn't provided. So I'm not sure, because the preponderance of circumstantial evidence is so overwhelmingly strong, and because of McFeeter's lawsuit that's now demanding certain things be provided, I don't see how judges rule in his favor. I just don't. So I know, yes, they could do it. They could choose to ignore the law. The Republican governors the Republican judges could refuse to, follow the law on this and give him some kind of a weird, freaky pass. But it's so freaking obvious. I just don't see how they do it. But yeah, it's possible they can't. So I don't know. That's what I'm saying. I don't know what they're going to do. I think it's a dilemma for them. I think it's a dilemma for Republican conservative governors.
I think that it's. I think McFeeter's lawsuit is probably not going to go very far. And I that is. It's not my opinion that it shouldn't go very far, because I think that there are certain things at play here, though, that make it unlikely to be successful and to survive really kind of an early dismissal, because the courts have given in the past such tremendous leeway and deference to the parties to select their candidates and to conduct their own business in terms of who they're going to put on a ballot. And they just have tended to take a hands-off approach to this. And so I think that that's probably going to be the undoing of McFeeter's lawsuit.
So let me ask you this, a very specific question about what you just said. So are you saying that you think the courts are going to refuse to take to rule on the case? They're going to just dismiss it? What are you saying they're going to do?
I think that they're going to there's going to be a pretty quick motion to dismiss filed by Tuberville's team, and I think that it will most likely be successful because the argument is going to be, and this is the other thing about this. That has nothing to do with the merits of what McFeeters is arguing. Okay, because I think that what's contained in there is there's some merit to it. All right, but I think that what they're going to dismiss and actually it may not even be Tuberville's folks. It'll probably be the Alabama Republican Party's attorneys who filed this motion to dismiss, and they're going to say, listen, we have the right to conduct our own hearings. We have a right to conduct our own reviews the way that we want to. McFeeter submitted his this challenge to Tuberville. We reviewed what he had submitted and determined that it wasn't, valid. And so we dismissed it. And the court is going to say that's the process that's in the Republican Party bylaws, and they followed it, and we're not going to get in the way of that. And I think that's what's going to happen. I don't think, I'll say this. My opinion is, I think whether Republican, Democrat, and this has come up on the Democratic side before, and I've made this argument there as well. I believe that a court should exert a little more authority if we're going to be giving this, especially if we're about to close primaries and do some other things like that. Where I think that a court should step in and force a party to say, to make sure that these parties are following state laws and making sure that they're putting people on the ballot who are eligible, and that we're not having this popularity contest kind of stuff or whatever else that's taking place here. I do, and that has nothing to do necessarily with just this case in specific, but I think all across the board, I think if we're going to give the parties this level of power to determine who we can and cannot vote for, and if they're going to be kicking people off ballots and stuff. And I think that probably should have also been a part of McPheeters' lawsuit, and the arguments here is that, hey, this party's kicking people off ballots here. We got to make sure that they're following the laws and that they're not excluding folks and giving people an opportunity to vote for who they need to. Right. But courts have historically in this state taken a real hands-off approach here. Okay. And I think that's what they're going to do here.
Well, then that leads to another question, and I'm asking you a question I honestly don't know the answer to. Maybe you do. So, is this something that could be appealed, to the federal courts?
I don't know how that would be. I think that this is a state issue. It's a state election issue. Unless there was some form of a federal matter, whether it be discrimination of some sorts based on a protected class, I would maybe that would be a manner of getting it in there. But I don't see that happening. With the Republican Party. It's not a lot of protected classes there, and so. Honestly, this is why I've always said, and why I've found it so ridiculous that when other people were writing about, Tuberville has passed his biggest challenge, I was like, no, the biggest challenge is coming as soon as he wins the primary. And that's going to be the challenge at that point that's filed in court, because that court challenge is the one that holds him to the standard of being a nominee and when you're a nominee for a major party, you are at that point a de facto state official, and you have to adhere to state law for whatever position that you're running for. And so that is the lawsuit that is going to force him to answer the question about his eligibility based on his residency. All right. And so that's the one that is going to, that I think is going to get past the dismissal stage of this thing, and it's going to get into the discovery stage. And if it gets into the discovery stage of this thing, and he has to start turning over documents, and those documents are now public, that becomes a pretty big problem. And I think that is, and look, McPheeters made this argument yesterday. That they're going to, you're running the risk here of failing to do this now. And Doug Jones, and he flat out said, Doug Jones is going to win that case. I don't think that's the case either. But the reason why I don't think that's the case is I don't think there's enough time to win that case. But if it left to the merits of it and there was enough time, Doug Jones would 1,000% win that residency challenge. 1,000%, not a question in my mind, because it's just going to be a black and white issue.
Okay, so let's sort of walk through this slow walk through this part a little bit, for my sake and maybe some of the listeners as well. You're first of all, you're saying that you think that the very same court system that would dismiss it at this stage would be much harder pressed to dismiss or rule for Tuberville once he's nominated, assuming that he's going to be nominated.
Yeah, well, I think because there's two different things. I think that what we're talking about right now is we're not looking at Tommy Tuberville's residency. Okay. So he's not, at this point, he is not held, the court will not hold him to the residency standard. There's nothing that says the court has to intervene here and do this, because it's up to the party. The party is making the determination of whether or not he's eligible to be on the ballot based on their bylaws and on state law. And they have looked at it and made a determination that he is eligible to be on this ballot. All right. And so the court is going to say, the court at this point is just simply looking at whether or not the Republican Party adequately followed its bylaws and took a look at him, and whether or not they went through the process properly. All right. And they're going to say, did McFeeters have an opportunity to challenge? Yes, he did. Did he submit a challenge? Yes, he did. Was that challenge reviewed? Yes, it was. There was a determination made by the executive committee, by the Republican Party, to dismiss it because of whatever reasons. And honestly, they could just say, look, we don't like the paper that it was written on. Okay. And we just kicked it out. And that is enough, unfortunately, given the precedent that we have in this state, probably for the court to say, okay, we're going to dismiss this thing, because the party followed its bylaws and followed its processes. They're not making a ruling on Tommy Tuberville's residency status, and on whether or not he's here. Now, when it moves to the part, once he becomes the party's nominee, it's no longer about the party. At that point, he is a quasi-state official. He is now up. They treat him under the law as being as a person who has to adhere to and to follow the laws of the state as required for that position. Okay. And so now the court is looking at whether or not he meets all of those requirements.
Okay, so this side of the argument is merely about ballot eligibility. And that side of the argument is about state law.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess technically they're both about ballot eligibility to a certain extent, because he's on the ballot, but he is at that point, the party is not involved in whether or not he makes the ballot. And so now it's up to the court. It moves the responsibility of determining that from the party to the court system. And so the court system now has a role to play when this challenge is made in determining whether or not he has adhered to these laws that govern whether or not you're eligible to run for the position in which you're on the ballot for.
Okay. Now, the other thing is, all right, assuming, and of course, we already know where I stand. So assuming that Doug Jones is the Democratic nominee. Mm-hmm. Or let's just say whoever the Democratic nominee is, Will Boyd or Chig Martin or whomever.
Jamel Brown,
Yolanda Flowers. The likelihood that the Democratic nominee is going to file a lawsuit is we would assume is considerable. But I will say, and this is what I want to bring up with you now. So far, Doug Jones's camp is saying publicly that he doesn't have any plans to file a suit. Mm-hmm. So you think that's
they're going to file a suit.
That's okay. So that's just politics right now.
Well, listen. Here's the other thing: is I don't think that honestly, I don't think that Doug Jones and his campaign is going to file a lawsuit. I think a citizen of the state of Alabama is going to file a lawsuit.
Oh, okay.
And that's all that is needed. And then I think you'll probably see some very familiar names show up on the lawyer rolls for, that we all know, to hear this thing out. And look, the bottom line is going to be the documents. And McFeeters has this 100% right, okay, and he's 100% correct in this. It's going to be the documents that determine this. You can't simply say I got a driver's license and I claimed a homestead a few years ago in this state. It does not get you to residency. You've got to be a resident citizen of this state, and there are certain ways that you determine resident citizen, and there where you spend your time, the majority of your time, where most of your possessions are, where there are a whole bunch of things that go into this. But I think the ultimate undoing for Tommy Tuberville is going to be the tax returns, and and I've said it before, and I'm going to say it again. Okay, there is also an issue, and we went through this with the David Cole thing here about where you voted. Okay. And if there are not tax returns for the state of Alabama for a period of years, and Tommy Tuberville voted in the state of Alabama, something is illegal one way or the other. You can't vote here and not be a citizen, and you can't be a citizen here and not pay taxes here.
Got
okay?
It. Yeah.
So something is amiss. All right. And so whether you've committed tax fraud or you've committed voter fraud, one of those things has to be true. All right. Now, again, we get into the who's going to hold this person accountable for this, of course. But as I told a very high-ranking Republican official who mostly agreed with me the other day, this tax return situation is a pretty black and white issue. Either you got them or you don't got them. And if you don't got them, then some people wearing robes are going to have some hard decisions to make. Okay.
All right, you talk to a high-ranking Republican official. I don't have any conversations with Republican officials or really Democratic officials outside of this podcast, to be honest. So what I'm curious about is what's the mindset of that person and maybe of their colleagues, their fellow party leaders. I mean, are they seeing that this is a car that's about to fall into a ditch, drive into a ditch, or what are they saying? What are they thinking?
You know, it's a weird deal. So I think everybody has this idea of there's this kind of either one way or the other sort of thing, you know, with when it comes to Tommy Tuberville. Either you hate him or you love him sort of thing. And I think that's true for a lot of voters out there. But when you get into the Republican Party, you have these groups of people there that I believe would rather not have Tommy Tuberville as their governor. They would have rather had Will Ainsworth as their governor. You know, if had this worked out to the way they wanted. They had this whole lineage thing set up, and Will kind of flowed right into what was being done, and you know, and kept things moving along, because a lot of these people are tied to business interests and other things, and business interests, as we know, they like stability. They like to be able to guess what's going to happen next, so they can plan for it and plan out some things. And so, I think that's what they wanted. And Tommy Tuberville has upset that cart, and I think there was some initial very, very angry people, and I think there probably still are some who are very unhappy that Tuberville is likely to be, you know, the nominee and you know, a front runner for governor. And so, but they've figured out ways to maneuver themselves into positions where they think it's going to be workable at this point. And so they're basically taking we'll see what happens sort of thing. You know what I mean? There's just we'll see. Well, look, but they all agree that first of all, we've never seen anything like this. Okay. We've never seen anything like this where there is a legitimate challenge to the eligibility of a high ranking candidate like this. Okay. I mean, we've had it in the legislature, as we know, with David Cole pretty recently, but we've never had it at this level where number one, there's this person who we all know, and is a very popular candidate within the party. And number two, it's so obvious that he's in violation of this pretty standard thing, you know, and that they're just continuing to move forward with it as though they're not. And so, you know, I think the Trump years have kind of taught a lot of these folks to just be like, well, you never know what the hell's going to happen at this point. You know, I mean, laws can be bent or broken, I guess. And so I think there's some of that attitude there where it's just, we'll see. And I think that is kind of the overriding thought process with this. It's just kind of I don't know, man. We've had discussions, and what I've heard from most people is, look, we've talked to the Tuberville camp, and they think that they've got evidence enough to beat whatever comes out at court. And I mean, I always say, but what about like the tax returns? Because, you know, it's my understanding he doesn't have 7 years worth. And they're like, well, you know, they say they think they're okay there. And, you know, I don't know what that means, what that is. I have my, like you, I think that if he had the tax returns, we would have seen them by now. Because number one, you don't have to turn over the tax returns. All you got to do, there's a sheet out there that you can get from the Treasury Department in the state that just shows whether or not you're in compliance with paying state taxes if you lived here. And he could have clearly done that. And the other thing I tell people about this when they bring these things up is, well, people will say, well, I mean, on technicality about, the law and stuff here, y'all are just bringing this up because they know y'all know Doug Jones can't beat him. And I'm like, look, I'm not bringing up anything. Okay. I've brought up that he doesn't live here because the record clearly shows that. And this is a law. This is a state law. Okay. It is not me making this up. This is a state law that requires you to have lived here 7 years prior to the election. And so if that's the case, then you're supposed to follow the law. And if you're not going to follow the law, then what other laws are we not going to follow anymore? What goes into this? And here's the big thing about it. The big thing to me is he didn't have to do this. He didn't have to run for governor. He could have stayed a senator. He could have left and gone to the beach house in Florida and went fishing. He did none of this. Or at some point over the last 6 or so years, he could have moved to Alabama. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of nice beachfront places in Orange Beach down there that he could have moved to if that's where he wanted to live. Yeah. Or he could have moved to Auburn. There's a lot of nice places in Auburn. He could have done any of those things and established a residence of some sort. He's got plenty of damn money. He could have bought a house in Auburn as his residence and still kept the beach house down there and traveled back and forth. He didn't do any of that. None of it. He made zero effort to do any of those things. And so, I mean, who am I supposed to feel sorry for out of this?
Yeah, I wouldn't feel sorry for him because I feel like he's just giving a big middle finger to the state, to be honest with you. That's what I think he's doing. Yeah. He's just like, I think, I'm going to do what I want and forget y'all,
I think that there's a lot of truth to that. I think there is a lot of truth to that. I think that there is a lot of truth to him saying, I'm going to live down here because this is where I want to live. And there's nothing in the law that says I don't. And then when he decided to run for governor, he never bothered to change any of that. He didn't change any of that. And it just, I mean, it's just, I don't know, man. I just, like I said, we'll see what happens. Maybe they've got a pathway out. Maybe there's some records that I don't know about. Maybe there's a home somewhere that they've been keeping secret this whole time. That we'll see. We'll see. Yeah. There's no travel records to or from it, and all the records that I've seen indicate that he lives on the Gulf Coast in Florida and not in Alabama. So maybe there's some records out there that we don't have access to that will prove otherwise, and I'd love to see them if they're out there. So. Yeah. All righty, let's get out of here. We're going to come back with Stephen Reed, and then we have two attorneys from the Southern Poverty Law Center. Well, actually, I'm sorry, one attorney from the Southern Poverty Law Center, and then a former attorney who is now the Alabama Policy Director, Jerome Dees. And so we're going to get those folks all on and talk about some good issues. So listen, it'll be a treat for you. It's Alabama Politics This Week, brought to you by Wing Creek Entertainment.